The hiatus is over. We're back.
The hiatus is over.
It's nice to be back. I've missed you. Missed you too, Mario. Glad to have you.
I always miss you, Justin.
Yeah. We talk basically every day, but haven't got to see each other, hang out, man.
We still got to do drinks and tacos.
Yes, I know. We've been talking about that for like 3 months. But glad to be back, man.
With the one and only Mario
Gutierrez.
Do you have a crazy long name?
Yeah, but it's like I don't use it for my American documents, only my Colombian documents.
Yeah. It's like 17 names.
Something like back to the 1600s, you know.
Oh,
dude, that's awesome though.
That
is cool.
Yeah.
Colombia, right? Yeah. When's the last time you actually were
there? December.
Nice.
December. So I try to go more or less every year if I can, you know, when you can.
Yeah.
Is most of your family still in Colombia?
Everybody except my parents, my sister, and a couple cousins.
Okay.
Everybody's back.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that is good. I need to go down there with you. We've talked about that.
We've talked about it, man.
Yeah.
Go
in a former life, I know I was Latin. I know I was. I had to be.
You still have the chance. You still have a chance. You still have a chance.
Good. Good. I hope so.
You're telling me there's a chance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Mario, we're glad to have you. And honestly, I know we say this almost every single time, but Mario's been one of my best friends in the space since I got going, really. And first time we met was at a meetup, and there was like 12 people there, I think.
It's like 12 people. You know, Griffin was a cowboy in the room, right? We were all under like that tree out in Holler, right?
It was hot. We're outside. It was an outside meetup.
Yeah.
First one.
Yeah.
It was one of the first ones.
It was one of the first ones.
Yeah.
It was one of the Houston ones?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Before shit went vertical.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a while. So, but tell them your background so that everybody kind of knows where you come from. Because I did think you have, similar to like us, you know, you come from the oil and gas space, but you've seen kind of the parallels between the industries and how they fit. So
Yeah, happy to do it. So, you know, I'm originally from Colombia, second generation oil and gas. My mom was like the first woman hired by Halliburton to do field work in LATAM back in the 80s.
Dude, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we moved here in the early 2000s. You know, it was just, you know, few places are better to raise kids than, you know, Texas. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'm pretty sure my parents probably still see Colin rucking around Katy, you know, so, you know, did high school there. Didn't want to become a geologist, but you know, every vacation to national parks kind of takes you that way. Went to school at Ohio State, met my business partner, my consulting firm there. And it was all during the shale boom there. Mm-hmm. And that was crazy. It was just a completely different animal than what I've known, which was mostly, you know, international stuff through my parents' experience. And, you know, once I decided that, you know, oil and gas was kind of the way to go, made my way back down through UT Austin to Texas, and kind of just got thrown into the big ship at ExxonMobil, right? And you know, you're like, oh, go to the Tiger. It's the safest place to be, right? And it really was the most amazing place to be from a data perspective, from you know, the science that you were working on, right? And so I was deployed into business units from the technology sector to solve problems and apply technology. And so that had me looking at, you know, new source rock plays in West Africa, all the way to helping, you know, find new reservoirs in Guyana, to, you know, helping out the Delaware Basin unit integrate, you know, XTO with Exxon, and, you know, and make sure that, you know, those who were boots on campus were talking to those who were ties, right? In that regard. And, you know, kind of my springboard to Bitcoin, you know, was seeing the Caruso pilot back, you know, 3-4 years ago inside the beast, right? And really seeing it as an energy optimization, energy infrastructure solution. Not to mention all the wonderful properties that Bitcoin has that I'm sure many of your guests have spoken before. And that's when I was like, shit, this is going to change the game, right? It's going to change how you underwrite these projects. It's going to change how you operate them. It's going to change how they're consumed. And that's when I was like, amazing. And ExxonMobil did me a favor and they let me go in early 21. And that's how kind of I jumped in. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the long way of, you know, to say where I'm here now.
Were you a Bitcoiner at the time when they were doing that project?
Not. I mean, I knew about Bitcoin, but like not until you really kind of really, you know, spend some time in the rabbit hole, do you really understand how fucked up the world is. And then once you start to understand, you know, at least in my experience, you know, earning dollars was always the best currency, right? And we always had a perspective of what's the dollar versus the peso, and I'm like, why is the peso way less worth less than the dollar? And then just seeing the U.S. dollar kind of also kind of have its own devaluation over time has you thinking, right? And then
especially
you get
in 2021.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly. So then everything aligns, and you get you put on your tinfoil hat on real fast, and then it all makes sense. And so going into the Bitcoin space, kind of the bet that myself and my partner at Vibe Energy, which is a consulting firm in the space, it took was we can learn how to integrate Bitcoin mining easier than Bitcoin miners can integrate energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that mining or it hasn't been able to do that, but energy is its own beast of a game, right? And so through that, we've built a lot of excellent partnerships, not only here in Texas but also in Appalachia and also in Latin America. And I'm happy to talk about those a little bit later. And one of my first experiences kind of really interacting with the Bitcoin space was with Justin. So I onboarded onto On-Chain Capital and really got the whole orange pill.
Dude, I forgot about that.
And you were my first client.
No kidding?
Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Because I always pitched the oil and gas industry needs an enterprise governance solution for custody. Right? Because your CFO who's 65 wasn't going to hold a software wallet that, the cat pushes into the pool, right? That's not how you do business. And through that year, we got to develop a great relationship. You built a great project over in Wyoming. And, I miss kind of being on the phone with you for 3 hours at a time, trying to get those keys.
UTXS.
Yeah. And so kind of following there, kept building, Vibe, creating relationships across the energy space, really kind of branding ourselves as a bridge between two worlds that don't talk to each other, but man, do they need to. And then also kind of most recently, lead corporate strategy at Exit Digital, which is a kind of more traditional take on this whole game as well. And so kind of running it out, it's exciting because it's just like oil and gas. It's just like shale. If you look at the last 18 months in Bitcoin mining, it's like, leverage on expected revenues that aren't realized. Okay, great.
Right.
That's all the shit codes in shale, right? That consolidating, right? And so it's a lot of fun in regards kind of, taking it from that manner. So that's me. I love Houston. Every other city in the state is nice, but fuck everybody but Houston. So
I will say though,
you can take that out if you want, but
no. Fuck Houston's weather right now.
That's
this
right.
Sucks. Gosh,
I don't know how we do it, but I guess it's it's all good.
That's the trade-off for the amount of opportunity that there is in Houston.
That's right,
man. That's so true.
There we go.
Like Houston's weather sucks. The people are cool, and the job opportunities and entrepreneurial type.
You can build
are,
here, right? Yeah. And if you want to put that through the Bitcoin lens, a miner who doesn't have somebody in Houston is going to be at a huge disadvantage in the next halving. Right. And, I have this paper that I'll never publish about how the Bitcoin tech stack won't be built in Austin or in Nashville or New York. It will be built by the 1% of devs at Chevron and at Exxon in Houston, Lagos, and Calgary, and Midland. Right. Because
when aren't you going to publish it?
Oh, because there's only 24 hours in the day, man. But somebody
this guy is doing. I didn't know there was
like some secret shit in there.
No. It's just a whole bunch of blog posts.
It's too groundbreaking for people.
Mario is as busy of a dude that I know in the space. You got your hands in so many different pots and so many different things.
You're also the most networked person, I think, in the entire space.
It's
you just come up in conversations constantly.
I appreciate that. Hopefully in a good light.
But
if not in a good light, at least in a fun light, right? At least in a fun light. But kind of it's been great to develop a relationship with the Digital Wildcatters team here. We've done an event out in Ohio, kind of amongst the many things that I focus on. We focus kind of on developing the integration with legacy industry. And Ohio is, I think, the best bet to orange pill in order to defang Elizabeth Warren and make this a nonpartisan issue. So go lobby in Texas, go lobby in New York, but if you actually want to get any work done, go to Ohio. And my partner, Andrew, does a great job there. educating the stakeholders in that state as well.
Andrew Birchwell, president of the Ohio Blockchain Council.
That's right. And who I think was on episode 2 with Max.
You're right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so, kind of we tend to culminate all this information in something that, a vibe letter, a newsletter that we call the Vibe Check, which is meant to be kind of a take on memes plus information. Right. And so if you guys want to subscribe to the Vibe Check. And it's also just a lot of fun to share information. And so yeah, it's fun. It's we work on a lot of deals. We do a lot of things with friends, so it keeps it interesting for sure.
Honestly, that's again, we say this all the time, but that's what's so fun about this space is like I've watched you really kind of create your own persona or position or area in the space, and that's what's awesome about getting into something so early is you got plenty of opportunities to kind of make your life whatever you want it to be, and that's why I love it, man.
It's fun, man. We can't be doing happy hour at back at Big Oil, right?
Yeah,
It's
right.
It's and I think one of the most fruitful things has been seeing my colleagues in Big Oil kind of look at the cycle, watch it come back down, and then see that it's still there and be like, okay, now let's learn.
It's real.
Right? Because
that's a good point, because this has been the most visible downturn, because I think when Bitcoin ran up in 21 and the end of 21, like it was everywhere. Everybody's watching, everybody's asking questions. My mother-in-law was buying Bitcoin, my aunts were buying Bitcoin. And then you see the big downturn, and that's probably the first time they really paid attention to it. And so when they see that we're still here, we're probably the best performing asset in the country this year.
Right.
Really, I mean,
you have Larry Fink from BlackRock now kind of touting the glory of Bitcoin after he filed for the ETF. But
of course,
that's but still, right?
Yeah, which they've changed their tune on it from a year ago or a year and a half ago, whatever.
Yeah.
So, but so it's good. I think it's good for everybody, and it'll lead to hopefully a little bit more education and
for sure
on just kind of the cycles of Bitcoin and what Bitcoin is and what it's for. And I even think some of the differentiation that people are going to start understanding between Bitcoin and crypto is due to the downturn in these kind of FTX and all these different things.
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to get it, and they still tie it to each other a lot, but there are some folks that are understanding that Bitcoin is different than all this other junk that's out there.
And I think one of that difference is it's tied to thermodynamics, to energy. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, being able to explain that to a traditional energy, stakeholder is, I think, where a lot of us spend a lot of time, right? Because plugging in the machines is one part of the exercise, but really understanding where it optimizes your core business is another, right? I have, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, but, we have the halving coming in the next year. What do you think is going to happen? I have my own hot take, but I'd love to hear what you guys have.
I think that, like we were talking earlier, you got a lot of people kind of sitting around waiting to see what's going to happen. But the difference here too is that you've got an environment that the first time in Bitcoin's life cycle we're not in basically a 0% interest rate environment.
That's
You've
right.
got a lot tighter capital.
That's
so that is going to impact what happens, in my opinion.
Yep.
Over the next 10 months coming into the halving. But I do think obviously you've got people that are positioning themselves right now to kind of weather the storm that is obviously coming for them, the miners in particular, that's who I'm talking about, but weather the storm that is inevitably coming. We know it's coming.
Yep.
And hope that it's a lot that we're already coming towards the end of it. Because like I said, I think, and Jeff Berkey actually mentioned this on an episode way early on, that there might be a little bit more anticipation of the halving. And so some of the money coming back into Bitcoin might come a little bit earlier.
That's fair.
So I think that could play in there a little bit. But I mean, realistically, I think people are trying to position themselves with the best asset and kind of wait out, maybe not get operational as quickly as possible. You'd mentioned something about that earlier on, and just kind of have an asset that they know is going to allow them to be competitive, but maybe not spend a ton of capital right now to get online. Yeah. So I think miners are going to go down. Like the prices of ASICs are going to continue to go down. I don't see
which is like scooping up assets at $30 oil.
Right.
So it's all about kind of where can you position yourself in that regard. You know, kind of an analogy I like to use is don't worry about what the price of oil is, worry about what your marginal cost to produce a barrel is.
Right.
And how does it compare with your competition? And that's your ability to survive. And that's basically
finding a good
concept,
asset.
right?
So you're thinking that most people who have capital are just kind of waiting on the sidelines to see, can they buy assets for pennies on the dollar for cheaper than building those assets? And that's who's going to be competitive in this environment?
That's right. You know, anybody who is levered and hasn't got wiped out yet will get wiped out. And can they be opportunistic and go gather those assets, right? You know, and I think something that we're going to also start to see is how Bitcoin mining as a core business, unless you're extremely competitive, isn't going to be how the network grows, right? I look at Bitcoin mining as a optimization tool for the energy industry, right?
I do too.
And so you guys have, you know, had many clients, you know, come on, you know, for oil and gas, right? It's like, sure, the flare applications are a really great one to keep, you know, flow assurance, right? And be able to kind of cash flow, all the way to deferring P&A liabilities. Right. You know, one of the topics that we talk a lot about is all the orphan well problems. I mean, that's a typical generational oil and gas problem here in Texas, Ohio, wherever it may be. And it's like, imagine you could take some of these marginally economic Bitcoin miners and some of these orphan wells that maybe are doing 50, 100 MCF a day and pair them together, call it the orphanage, right? And have the first dollar equivalent of an MCF that's mined go to an escrow account to cover that cost.
Yeah.
You just had a market solution plug a liability that oil and gas has not been able to plug. You know,
man, that Ryan and I were talking about doing that, and when we did talk to the Oil and Gas Commission up there about it, and it was literally that same premise is, especially because you got so many of the CBM wells up there, that just tons of them, and you got a huge, same with a lot of the oil and gas producers.
And you have your soon-to-be orphans, right? Your marginal ones, right? They're just going to throw them away and
and it's like you could take like a % out of that revenue, dedicate it to, we called it a P&A fund too, reclamation though as well. Like there's so many different things you could use it for. The benefit ESG metrics, they benefit oil and gas, getting rid of
everybody wins.
Like,
and it's a great narrative,
wins,
right? And so that's where I see a lot of the industry going is like what other applications can be done. For example, if I'm an operator in the Permian, you know, the basin's getting gassier, always hire geologists is the lesson. And then B, they don't have enough offtake due to flare regulations in pipeline. So how does an operator meet liquids targets, right? You know, they need some offtake, right? That's a Bitcoin miner, right? You know, even the power traders can really, you know, kind of dive in because now you can swing trade gas, the electron, and hash rate, right? And so it's really revolutionizing how we look at energy, as a whole. And so that's what I think is really interesting. You know, if you were to put a graph of hash rate, of hash price versus versus oil price or gas, and you asked, you know, a family office here in town which one was more volatile, you know, they might come down to a conclusion that might have them ordering some ASICs, right? You know, so so it's all about like getting framing the problem in the right, you know, kind of in the right lens is how I feel many of us, you know, have had conversations.
I think a question a lot of people may have, just kind of going back to our having conversation for a second, of, you know, if essentially you're losing half your kind of revenue potential, and if you equate that to oil and gas, if you're at, you know, $100 a barrel and now you're down to $50 a barrel, you know, if assuming that Bitcoin price stayed flat at, we're about 30,000 right now, can you make money?
If your cost to produce is lower than everybody else's, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And if you have the balance sheet strategy to withstand that period of time between the reduction in margin income and the supply shock that boosts, you know, price later on, can you get through that timeline? I don't know what that's going to be, right?
And that's the big question. No one knows how long it lasts for sure.
That's right.
There's usually a pretty significant delay, like say 6 to 9 months before you see that rocket ship. And I don't anticipate it not happening this time.
In terms of price?
Yeah. Right. You'll have the halvening and your revenues literally drop in half overnight.
That's right.
Like
What happened in the last halvening in terms of price spike? I mean, so it was 4 years ago. So was it in 2019, early 2020?
May of 2020. And then remember what happened at the end of 2020. That's when
it ended up ripping at that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's different macro factors now, right? And there's a lot of people who can dive into those, that side of things. But I think we have a magnitude shift forward in how Bitcoin's regarded, right? You have companies like Nextera, large thermal generators getting into the space now, are you using it as an asset? You have El Salvador and other jurisdictions looking at it, right? You have the biggest asset manager looking at it. We've made progress in the narrative, right? And so I think, I'm very optimistic in that regard. It's more, what does the M&A, landscape going to look like? Who's going to be opportunistic, right? Very much like oil and gas. And so that's where we spend a lot of time thinking right now, is kind of strategizing. What does that look like? Because at the same time, the space is super undercapitalized right now.
Extremely.
I mean, you've raised capital in the space, right?
It's so difficult. So difficult right now. I was talking to Chuck earlier. It's difficult everywhere right now.
That's right.
But
generally to raise money for literally anything, is difficult.
This guy's always trying to raise money too.
Always.
Always. Yeah,
it's tough. It's really tough out there. But going into an industry that is already kind of on the fringe a little bit, or outside of the mainstream, or outside of,
it takes education.
Right. It just adds another layer of complexity to
and the fact that it's not a venture. It's much more of a private equity or very capital intensive play, right? It's energy infrastructure. You're building actual infrastructure, right?
Man, we talk about that a lot too. That's the pitch, right there, because that's a real thing. That's really what it is. Yeah. But you just mentioning the word Bitcoin sometimes throws people off. But when you pitch it, which I know you guys do that at Exo, it's more of a infrastructure pitch.
It's an infrastructure.
Yeah, because that's something that a lot of these groups that are kind of more traditional oil and gas, they understand. And
that's right.
So getting them over the hurdle.
It's the midstream concept, right? It's just another way to market, right? And so that's like Bitcoin as an energy market kind of comes into frame, right? And that's usually the best entry point with the energy community. And then you can talk about, it as a money, as a technology itself, right? The development of payment systems happening right now in the developing world. All those things can come later, right? But you gotta hook them in and be able to separate from all the bullshit that's crypto related, and kind of be able to have them have the signal.
So you mentioned like Latin America or developing countries, right?
Yeah.
Where do you see? Well, and you would know too.
Yeah.
You got the Colombia roots and all that. So where do you see? And I know you have been doing some work with some countries down there, and I don't know if you can talk about some of that, but if you can,
I can speak at a kind of a broad brush.
Okay.
Really quickly, before we dive in, could you explain the nature of like what your consulting is at a high level?
Oh, sure.
Just so that everybody understands.
Yeah.
And then let's dive into.
Yeah. No, definitely. So, we focus a lot kind of in three main kind of, avenues. We do a lot of strategy, education, and let's say kind of underwriting, right? So we will help an energy company understand the space and be able to kind of assess it correctly. We'll help a miner understand, what, they're doing on the other side of the energy spectrum. And then, of course, with any general finance, participant, be able to kind of understand what business you're actually going into. So we, at a high level, we hold your hand and get you from point A to point B, and make sure that you have success. And the second place where we spend a lot of time is origination, right? Is very much like a land game, being able to find diamonds in the rough, and bring them to market with partners who are looking for sites. And that's something that, almost takes me back to like my exploration roots.
I was just saying, that's like a geologist.
It's a geologist, right? You're overlaying different factors and rating them in different ways. And so that's a lot of fun. And, we do that, not only kind of on grid and off grid, but, also, existing facilities, right? So you got PDP, you got, wildcats, different things, different jurisdictions. So it's very much like oil and gas. It's very interesting. And then we also stay very busy on the brokerage side. So as just kind of a byproduct of our relationships, there's always equipment that needs to be moved from point A to point B. It's still a very, let's say, kind of, fast growing industry. So there's not that vendor benchmark that you get in oil and gas where you can go get 3 quotes in the same day. That doesn't really exist. And you have to do it all on Telegram, right? So, so that's where we kind of block and tackle amongst many things, and so we're really there to help you get from point A to point B. Make sure you understand where what the lay of the land is, and if there's anything missing, we have that network to help you kind of get you over the line in that sense. So, give me a shout. I'm happy to talk. I call Justin every day just for fun. But no, I appreciate that. I appreciate it. So in LATAM, I find not only very personally exciting because of, my whole family's in Colombia and very familiar with the continent, but I also find it very professionally exciting. Latin America is where I think the energy infrastructure lens of Bitcoin mining can really, really, really take off, right? There's a whole bunch of infrastructure, whether it's, you want to say it's WEF funded, solar facilities or hydro dams with no transmission to population centers, or it's just, projects that never took, communities that never got served with consistent electricity. I think Bitcoin mining can kind of bridge and disrupt that dynamic. And, we've had these conversations, whether it's with El Salvador or other countries where, building a large, power generation facility might be too risky for international investors. What happened if you had cash flow on day one? Right?
Exactly.
And like that is crazy if you really think about it like that. And on day one, while they build transmission out to the main population center or whatever it may be, all the way, and that's at the big, large scale, all the way to kind of what Gridless is doing as an example in Africa, kind of somewhat on a tangent. When I was at University of Texas, I went to Colombia with Scott Tinker, who you guys should have on the show. Like from an energy perspective, I have Scott Tinker on the show. And he's a state geologist of Texas, and he really tackles energy problems and does a lot of work in energy education. And we installed solar panels in this indigenous village up in the mountains because they didn't want to take power from the grid due to the relationships with the government. But they also recognized that they needed refrigeration for medicines and that, their youth would benefit from having access to consistent electricity. And we put up solar panels and had a battery. If I would have known about Bitcoin mining back then, man, the what type of project we could have done there from just an optimization, it always kind of comes back to me. And so, I think about all the small communities in the Andes that maybe don't have, consistent electricity, and like what consistent electricity brings to you and it being cheap is access to the internet and extra reading time at night. And it means women and children can now access that as well. Right. And then imagine all the technological advancements that, next Mark Zuckerberg might be in a village in the mountains of Colombia. Right. So like that's what gets the people going. Right.
It gets the people going.
And so, but of course, with Latin America, it's a different dance. Right. You've had Griffin and Gideon and on here. That's right. Yeah, they're way better gangsters, right? Well, at least but better music and better drinks.
Yeah.
Right? But you've had kind of our friends Gideon and Griffin on, right? And they're the Cowboys here in Texas, and of course they're wildcatting somewhere else. But here's the land game of independent oil and gas guys that build their wealth. Back there, sure there are independent oil companies and energy companies, but when you're dancing at scale, you're dancing with the state, right? And so it's really being able to understand, well, it's not like we're going to go energize in the next 6 months. We're building a relationship that may come to bear fruit in 24 months and understand the different political and economic nuances of why a deal may make sense. Everybody across the table agrees with you, but we're going to wait till the next election. Right. Right. And so I look at LATAM as a kind of in the education phase right now. I'm not familiar. I'm not sure if kind of what the mining scene looks there right now. The majority, the OGs are the Venezuelans, right? Venezuela is an energy-rich country, extremely entrepreneurial population. And, as the sanctions and kind of, let's say, all the struggles that they dealt with in the last 20 years, not only did they use Bitcoin and were like the earliest adopters of Bitcoin, they also were early adopters of Bitcoin mining. Right. And so
didn't they recently have the super inflation and stuff, devalue the currency?
Exactly. So like imagine, instead of having to worry about your money being devalued in a state bank, you just took the electricity to your house, converted it into the hardest money you could ever, have, and then cross a border. I remember that crisis in Colombia when millions of people migrated and the travesty that, that had for the human condition. And, Bitcoin was at least a lifeboat for some that crossed the border. And so, the Venezuelans really took off, and then it's Paraguay, right? Paraguay sits, it has the second largest dam in the world, right? And has nowhere to sell the power.
This is why Bitcoin's an infrastructure play. That's the thing. All the stuff you've just said is why Bitcoin is an infrastructure play for all intents and purposes. Yeah. That's literally what it is.
That's right.
And it's hard to get people to understand that aspect of it if they don't spend the time digging into it. That's exactly what it is. And that's why it's so powerful for Latin America and Africa and all these developing areas. And that's why they're going to lead the adoption and lead the charge. Right. And I do think a lot of the innovation that'll come in our space and in the payment system, a lot of it's going to become down there because it's just, they have a need for it.
Well, think about, let's say you're a business owner in Argentina, right? Which has really tight US dollar controls. Like the black market there is crazy. Tariffs are crazy to import. How else could you send your money out of the country, right? Oh, I'll invest in a Bitcoin mine. It's a real asset. I can bank it. I can sell it to my business partners, but it settles in a different jurisdiction, right? In a U.S. domiciled custodial setup, right? You've never been able to do that, right? Mm-hmm. Like if, one of the examples I think hits home with some of the energy producers is, because they ask about hash rate, right? You've had Matt Williams on, you talk about Bitcoin. Imagine you're drilling a well in Colombia, for example. You have commodity risk, right, of the price of oil, and you have Forex risk, right? Same with Bitcoin. The commodity is the compute, and it settles on the native currency of Bitcoin, which you can convert to dollars, right? Mm-hmm. And we've hedged all that shit out before. Right. We're going to do it again, right? And so being able to offer that to Latin Americans is revolutionary.
I couldn't agree more. Elena, when she was on here talking about, she was in Argentina, and remember she was talking about literally rich folks going in, buying silver spoons when they get paid because that's going to hold its value better than their currency. That's not nearly as secure or effective as Bitcoin. And so that's I mean, the volatility obviously is still there in Bitcoin, but compare it to the reality of the economic conditions and the currency, the native currencies in some of these areas, it's not even remotely close. Yeah. It is by far a better. You can also transact with it.
That's right.
It's like this is way better than going and buying a silver spoon.
So I would say the energy companies there, in Brazil, in Colombia, Argentina, Ecuador, Paraguay, they see it, they get it. It's just is there a counterparty that can talk to them, can develop the relationship, that knows how to do business in the country? But we're starting to see, hash rate come up, right? Mm-hmm. We have friends who are doing pilots there. They'll announce them when they announce them. And, I'm particularly very bullish on Brazil. Brazil is larger than the 48, right? Mm-hmm. And so like you talk
about. Is it?
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Doesn't seem that way on a map, right?
Yeah, the maps are deceiving.
The maps are a little bit,
deceiving. When you look at it, look how far it's way east. You know what I mean? It's really deceiving when you look at it.
Yeah. Somebody's got to have like an image on Google comparing the two.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a meme.
Yeah,
right?
There's got to be.
But like once Latin America adopts it, a lot of the same observations that people who are pro-dollar or anti-dollar, they're all going to realize, oh, we have this better alternative. We create the energy, we control the money, we can make the best decisions for the development of our country. And that can be the grandma going to the corner store and getting some sats from her son in New York, all the way to a government agency, right? And
Brazil's like the fourth largest economy in the world, isn't it? Something like that?
It's huge, man. It's huge.
I mean, it's
I just found a picture of it overlaid. That's astonishing to me. I did not know that.
Wild?
That is nuts to me. Let's go to Brazil.
Let's
just go spend a
Energy Tech Night Rio.
Oh my gosh!
Energy Tech Night
it would
Rio.
pretty much be like Fast and the Furious 15.
Yes,
I haven't been to an Energy Tech Night yet either. I need to go.
Oh, brother, they're so fun. They're so fun, man.
I need to go to one. But if we do one in Brazil, that's the one.
Oh man, dude, that'd be wild.
Yeah, they do Bitcoin conferences also in Latin America. I think, for example, the Empower brand is something that is very exportable in that regard.
I've been trying to tell them we need to get down to El Salvador, do a documentary down there.
Yeah.
what we need to do.
The content would be great. They recently announced, large, solar, wind, maybe geothermal.
Maybe geothermal. Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah, they got to hire a geologist.
Yeah,
first.
yeah.
So
we got one right here. It's perfect.
So, but El Salvador, they're the leader. Everybody else is watching them, right? Because if they're able to develop, infrastructure using their volcano bonds and not have to depend on Western financing,
I know,
man, the hooks are out.
Right. What's a volcano bond?
So they are basically raising funds through these bonds they're selling. They're calling volcano bonds. And that's meant to finance, like Bitcoin City and their mining operations, which they just did a deal
El Salvador?
with. Yeah. They just did a deal. What's the group? Volcano
with Tether, Volcano Energy, which is a consortia of private and public entities in the country, including Tether.
Yeah, Tether.
Where did the whole volcano thing come from?
Well, they got more volcanoes. I think
they got no oil and gas, but they got a lot of volcanoes.
They got a ton of geothermal down there. Yeah. Volcanoes everywhere. They've got a really at the presidential palace. There's a like a 3D map out in the field of the country with all the volcanoes, and like they're scaled to size. It's super cool. It's super cool. Yeah.
That's pretty sick.
So it's
I think they have like over 40 volcanoes there.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. It's as a geologist, it's
really interesting.
It gets the blood going for sure. It's so what are we going to do? Empower El Salvador.
We need to.
Oh, I'm serious, man.
He'll get it done. He's got the connects. Justin's got the
connections down there. We'll do that.
Yeah.
So, but is it a lot of, is the rubber meeting the road down there, or is it a lot of talk?
No. The rubber's meeting the road.
They're doing stuff.
So
they're doing stuff now.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably, I think we'll have a couple 100 megawatts in Paraguay on in the next 12 months. Ecuador has a lot of hydro, a lot of flare. That's getting developed a lot.
What's the mix down there in terms of like domestic groups doing that, domestic for them versus U.S. groups and other groups coming in?
So it's a little bit like oil and gas, right? Yeah. Where you have people who, you have your local entrepreneurs who want to get something done, but they lack Western capital and they lack Western technology, right? Or, whatever it may be. And then you have, the international firms who want to diversify their exposure, right? You can't just hold, shale assets didn't mean anything before, 2004, right? And so what we see a lot right now is partnerships, right? You have a firm that's local that has all the relationships, that has been doing business with the oil and gas or the energy ministry for a decade or more, and they can benefit from an injection of capital. They can do the local operations, and they can work with that external partner to go execute a project. That is a much more, realistic way to realize a project versus, hi, I'm going to cold call or, hire a consultant that may know some people in country and try to kind of take it from 0 to 1 in that regard. But at the same time, places like Paraguay are very, proactive, and same with El Salvador, because Bitcoin mining actually affects their P&L, right? Like the amount of capital being injected into their country is really affecting the economy. Places like Brazil, like Colombia, like Mexico, they get it, they see it, but it's a little bit harder to move the needle there. So it's a little bit harder to get the attention of the people as well. But it's happening. It's meeting the road. Argentina's got the vaca muerta, right? It's the dead cow. The cow's not dead, right? It farts a lot of flare, right? And those operators are international operators with flare restrictions. So like there's it's a natural coupling with flare mitigation. And so I look at Latin America as being a place where a lot of the existing generation of machines in the U.S. will come, do their second act. And then maybe Africa will also kind of follow on and be a place where a lot of that gets developed.
Yeah, I think Latin America will probably do this faster than Africa, just from location purposes.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And being so close to the U.S. But yeah, man, I think I love what I think Latin America is going to lead the entire world in adoption and
I think so as well,
and creativity, and just kind of the U.S. is key, obviously, with most of the hash rate being here,
right.
But they have such a need for it, and it can do so much for them from an infrastructure standpoint and from a just creating a better life for the people there.
Right.
That I think it's inevitable. I don't think it can get stopped down there. I think it's going to happen because there's nothing else that compares to Bitcoin mining and what it can do from an infrastructure standpoint. So
it's all infrastructure.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's going to bring us cheaper power. Great. That's like all that matters. Right. Or it brings jobs. Right. Great.
Or electricity at all.
And it brings internet, cheap internet.
Right.
Now the youth don't leave. Right. Like what that does for communities from a ground up perspective
it's huge.
It's something that big international private firms that come to countries haven't been able to do for generations.
Right.
In Latin America, now I'm going to go down the rabbit hole and find out the size of the population and stuff. But I know you have certain cities that, let's just use like Mexico City. It's essentially, it's like not really much different than Houston. You have a lot of software developers. Obviously you have like poor areas and stuff. We have that here too. But like, what percentage do you think of Latin America is like kind of like third world versus like first world in terms of like this gets scale and you could essentially bring a lot of people out of like serious poverty and into more of like the modern world?
Yeah, that's a really good question that merits a couple of drinks.
Yeah.
I think Latin America for a long time has been atrophied by how its economies have grown, right? Whether you like it or not, most of the continent exports raw materials and imports aggregated value like an iPhone, right? And thus you're on the wrong side of a trade there, right? And so what that means is that those that are able to do so more, and those who don't even know something exists, continue to live that way. Obviously the internet's changed a lot of things. But the biggest thing I think there is the money and the devaluation of money, right? And so when somebody's living on paycheck to paycheck, doesn't own property, doesn't have access to financial literacy, or even the consistent use of the internet, right? Or electricity is too expensive, so why are they going to turn it on? It really puts, ties two hands behind their back, right? And so, people live, people get on, right? Like it's not like people stop living their lives, but, as an example, having to take 2 to 3 hours one way to go to university or to a job and then come back. Like that just takes up 16, 20 hours of your week, right? You lose time. Or the fact that the lights, you can't afford to have the lights on after a certain period of time, right? Those are the things that, like, if we brought consistent, abundant energy through, the bootstrapping mechanism of Bitcoin mining, man, now, people can study later, people can innovate, create an MVP, right? Open up a business, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Right. And so, it's the tools are there, to really kind of go from, where it is right now to somewhere. But I don't think, and this might be a little bit political, the people who are benefiting from the system right now have any incentive to change that.
Right.
Right. And so that's why I'm such a big believer in Bitcoin itself, is because, you don't have to be the son of a senator that attended Harvard or even speak English, right? Which is just a privilege among itself, or live in Silicon Valley to be early to a technology, right? Like Apple or some investment or whatever it may be. You can access Bitcoin, interact with Bitcoin, with access to the internet. And like, that's it. And so from a, democratization perspective, I don't think there's an opportunity, like it for, at least for my generation. And then the younger, maybe your kids' generation, where's the asymmetric bet? Right. Yeah.
Right.
So.
One of the crazy things I was thinking about, this is a little bit of a side tangent. I don't know where I'm going with
Those are the best.
I'm just going to
Those
say
are the
it.
best. Yeah.
We'll just see where the conversation goes. But I was thinking about, like, how do you, thinking about, first world countries, third world countries, and really what makes America different. And what the conclusion that I've kind of come to is the American dream is financed, right? And it's built entirely on the credit system. And if that was to be completely eliminated and we had to buy, because you're talking about buying, property and things like that. And if we had to buy homes and property and cars and all these things in cash, do you think that we would look the way that we do today? No, I think that we would look a lot like, and a lot of people would look the same way that we look at, and we still obviously have like energy infrastructure and stuff like that. But even that, is also financed.
Yeah.
You know, and
so I think it's more than it being financed is, how is it being financed, right? And what is the cost of that financing?
Yeah.
Right. When things are 0%, sure, anybody can raise $40 billion on renting rooms like WeWork.
Yeah.
Right. But if rates are a little bit higher, like they are right now, it's like, you better, dance, baby, dance. Right. If you want to raise money, or if you want to have me, have a different alternative to saving savings technology. So we've been, there's better people who can say this much better than I, but we've been conditioned not to save and not really allocate our capital in a great way, because if we save, then it gets, inflated away. Right. One of the things that really excites me, my family immigrated to the US. And at the time, before Bitcoin, the only way to take a magnitude step up in preserving your time and your children's time was to move to a new protocol, right? Go from the Colombian peso to the US dollar, right? And then, I sat, one of the ways I orange pilled my old man was showing his earnings if we would have moved back. And, it would have been like a fifth of the earnings, right? He's a geophysicist at Shell. And then, how that would have limited his ability to help all the family back home, right? And so it's like, okay, we're just on different protocols. How could we bridge the protocol that, is kind of, through financing, kind of, taking through debt, kind of stripping the rest of the world and bring the rest of the protocols up, right? And that's how I look at Bitcoin, because let's use an example. Let's say I'm a software developer in Nigeria, right? There isn't a local company to hire me. I get paid down here. And let's say I'm an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley and I need to hire a software developer, but I can't hire the salary of a former Facebook employee. How can I pay somebody with the same skills in a different country, right? Without a middleman that controls the money? Like, how can I directly pay somebody to write some code? Well, there's something called Bitcoin that can allow you to not only get better value, because now I'm paying half the price, but now also the employee is getting paid 3 times as much, right? And so like that now, allows that employee to stay home, not have to immigrate unnecessarily, right? Or go into worse conditions where he has to go do manual labor that isn't what, his dream, and stay home, spend that money at home, keep, not gut out his community, not have brain drain, right? On the flip side, that doesn't stress a lot of the systems that, a lot of politicians like to take, simple arguments against here in the States, and everybody wins. And it closes that arbitrage. And that's the power. That's the power. And now you can have, a young woman in a village, in a remote place, do work for a London power brokerage, right? And get paid, a great amount, and be able to bring that value home.
Right.
Like that's I think when you say, how do we fix all this bullshit and blah, 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 like that's the name of the game. Right?
I think it's really, really gratifying to be able to be in the situations where you can hire people that are in places like, just.
How's your experience with that? Right. You guys
we've been looking at building up a team. Obviously, G&A is your biggest cost as a startup, right? And so we've been very adamant about being, in office with the core team and stuff. I think it's very, very important for what we do for creative work.
The best memes come live from, the office.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you look at there's certain things where it's certain tasks and responsibilities that we don't need necessarily somebody in the office to do that.
Of course.
It's things that are kind of like just behind the scenes, and there are really, really talented people across the globe. And just like what you're saying is, we can get an absolutely amazing deal, build a larger team, and accomplish what we want much more efficiently. And at the same time, dramatically increase somebody's quality of life, right? And they're getting to do a profession that they absolutely love, and they're
going to bat to the fences because they're getting paid what they're getting paid by.
They will, they will go to the ends of the earth. Like we just hired 2 kids from overseas who cold emailed us and showed us some of their work on the creative side. Yeah, and I don't know, it's weird. Like a lot of times those just kind of go to spam. But me and Colin, both of them in the emails, looked at it and came together and we were like, "Yo, this is good. Like we should hire them 100%."
And so we did. Did you guys do the math on what it would have cost you to get a similar product here in the States?
We get a great deal.
Yeah,
we get a really, really good deal.
You guys should pay them in Bitcoin.
We should pay them in Bitcoin.
Like how would you pay them right now, through like an agency? more or less?
No, direct.
Okay.
Just direct to them.
Okay.
Yeah, these are like just like individuals.
Okay,
They don't work for like some big.
See what like
thing.
the Forex cut is on like when you pay them, and see if like you can maybe use strike, and maybe it might be better, might not be. Right?
Yeah. No, that's a really good idea. Yeah.
And that way you can also pay them like, oh, you did the first third, great. Here's the first third, right?
Yeah.
Like you can do that. That's
but
awesome.
it's so cool. I remember even with like with the first startup that I was involved in, one of our co-founders was in Eastern European country. Can't think of it off the top of my head.
Okay. Not England. Okay.
Not England, not Russia, but close to Russia.
Okay.
Serbia.
You know how like there's
Serbia,
you know how like there's West Texas, right? It's West Russia, and it's
He was Serbian, and like $3,000 a month to him, and he was living like a king.
Yep.
And this guy just went to the edge of the world.
And again, getting to do something he wants to do.
Yeah. And I've since worked with people who were arguably supposed to be more skilled here in the States. And like, there's like a sense of entitlement and like laziness.
Expectations.
That's why I love immigrants.
Yeah.
I resonate with immigrants so well. I feel like I'm kind of an immigrant parent with my kids.
Yeah.
Like I love them, but I have super high expectations for them at the same time.
You know? It's the opportunity sets in this country are historically have been worth the sacrifices. Right. And I am still a big believer in that American dream. And I think Bitcoin is very kind of founded in a lot of those principles, right? You know, you look at property rights, right? It's like property rights is the reason why most of the world doesn't get along. Imagine that you didn't have to fight about that because you have the ability to have property that's, that you can custody by yourself, right? Like that's
whoa. Yeah.
Right. It's great, man. I think it's a lot of fun. Maybe coming back to Houston, Houston is I think is going to be where Bitcoin takes that next inflection point.
I agree.
Man, it's exciting. Like when we first got kicking off, right? You'd have to you can make $40 in MCF. And now the conversation is you can now, revolutionize your collateral on power trading and decrease, your retail pricing, if you're a power person by 20% to your retail customer, right? Or have real time settlement, right? Like Sonoda. Mm-hmm. Or you can mitigate flare, or you can you want to do hydrogen? Great, cool. More energy, let's say you have a greenhouse in Canada, right? Now you can get fresh guac, right? Because you can push that heat into a greenhouse that you couldn't do before.
It's cool, the different quote unquote integrated energy systems that Bitcoin can play a part in.
Yeah.
Basically anything.
Heat recovery. I hope you guys bring Vincent on from What's Miner.
Mm-hmm.
They have a demo room down at Marshall's place. He's great. You guys got to bring him on. His bet is on heat recovery, like heat, like how to use heat better. Right. Yeah. So think about secondary recovery for a heavy oil, right? Or just creating steam for a whole bunch of shit. Right? Like that's, Bitcoin mining size. Don't get me wrong, but it's a tool in the tool belt of getting shit done. Right?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm not against the big mining companies and all that. Obviously I'm all for them and big supporters of them. But I think ultimately down the road, years from now, the best groups are going to be the ones that are using it as a part of their overall business strategy that obviously energy companies, utilities, the different groups, because it's such a unique tool. I don't know of anything like it that you can kind of
the algorithm is innovation.
Right. And which, speaking of some of the other industries, could go to some of your newsletter topics.
Sure.
Stuff.
Yeah, let's do it.
What's your thoughts on Berkshire Hathaway and their
so there's
involvement on?
So happy to. I think this happened a little bit earlier this year. We can start at the top with, Charlie Munger. You could say Warren's better half, maybe not. At least he looks like who's the guy from Star Wars that has Princess Leia as a slave?
Jabba the Hutt.
He looks a little bit like Jabba the Hutt, right?
Yeah.
So Mr. Jabba the Hutt, Munger, thinks Bitcoin.
He's so old. He looks like he could be Warren Buffett's dad.
Yeah.
He's 99, right?
Yeah.
He's old. I mean, hey, props to him for being
hey man, he made it.
Senile.
He made it. Well,
I'm convinced some of them have some weird, they got some weird stuff going on. They're drinking some little magic elixir.
Oh, sure. It's
it's the blood of the
go baby blood.
Perfect time for it.
Yeah. So, Berkshire Hathaway owns a shit ton of power generation. Like very quietly, they own most of like the Western Pacific power generation.
And a lot of
like
that's
market.
fossil fuels.
Yep. It's all fossil fuels. And it's all regulated. Those are the best markets when you own the market, right? And so in Texas, they own a lot of peaker plants, right? When the last storm happened, right? And, things fell off, they were like, oh, we need to put more peaker plants on, right? Because they participate in ancillary services.
2021, it was 10. They wanted 10 peaker plants in Texas.
And so kind of going fast forward, since then, Bitcoin mining came on and, this last June provided 2 gigawatts worth of relief of load. Amazing. And, where, I think Berkshire Hathaway, kind of positions himself with Bitcoin mining instead of like adopting it and being like, oh, great, we can optimize our OpEx. We can not, better run our thermo generators. No, they used their lobbying arm, right? This is my interpretation, to submit 2 bills into the Texas legislative session. One of them was to get basically subsidized financing to build these traditional peaker plants. So, are they capitalist? I'll let somebody answer that later. But they also introduced this anti-Bitcoin mining bill, which limited how much how much of the market in ancillaries in other programs that a Riot blockchain, for example, or whoever who's connected to the grid could participate in.
Did Berkshire introduce this, or was it the state of California?
No, Texas.
Oh, Texas did.
Yeah.
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 This is Texas.
This is that Senate bill.
Yeah. And so, imagine, Bitcoin miners that are, let's say what the power traders, the big box boys, basically act as a virtual power plant, right? They're always consuming load, and then they can, revert it back, and they can do it and bid much lower. So a much lower price in the auction system of ERCOT than a traditional natural gas peaker. So thus wrecking the ROIs of natural gas peaker plants. And so that's why they tried to kind of limit how much Bitcoin miners could participate. Well, thankfully so, and shout out to Lee and the TBC, right, and all our good friends doing advocacy, that didn't pass, right? And so now consumers in Texas get to benefit by having lower marginal bidders participating in ancillary services when we have all these off-peak events.
And I'll just clarify, this is the Martin Legal Group, paranoid brain in mine. Allegedly, Berkshire Hathaway had something to do with the introduction of the bill.
That's right. I can barely speak English, right? So it's like, but yeah, allegedly. And so
I'm pretty confident though.
Yeah. So that was
my opinion.
Yeah.
Anytime it's controversial, Mario just switched over to Spanish.
Yeah. And if I'm drinking Portuguese, right? It's I'll bring tacos to next week.
Yeah.
And so, that was kind of one of the big, people were hesitating on their capital injection into projects in Texas until that got resolved, right? And so, you're seeing things like that pop up in other states. You saw an anti-generation bill focused on scope reporting pop up in Pennsylvania.
Was that the House bill?
Yeah, it was a House bill.
Did it fail? Was it 14?
Yeah, 1461 or something like that.
Okay.
Like once you get past 3 numbers,
right?
I'm a geologist. I'm not here for the numbers.
Did that fail though?
Yes. The next week, there's this great video that Andrew posted about basically the guy who proposed it being like, yeah, we're going to remove it.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that would have affected any generators, right? Like it would have punched the generators.
Yeah,
so
it was behind the meter.
It was behind the meter power.
And it would have impacted flare as well.
That's right.
And which blows my freaking mind. I don't understand that.
So it's about education, right? It's about education. It's like, let's make the bet that we can educate better than they can become hysterical.
But there are some that it's like this is, our world has turned into such a, I'm a ideologue.
Yeah.
And
people need to go outside and touch some grass, right?
Right. Because if you're an environmentalist,
and maybe slap some ass, but it's like,
if you're an environmentalist though, the flare gas mitigation aspect of Bitcoin mining is a no-brainer.
Well,
there's a no-brainer.
I mean, if you're an environmentalist, you would be pro natural gas production in the United States to offset the 300 gigawatts of coal being generated in the East. Right. Like, who cares about emissions in the United States, right? When 90% of the emissions of flare are international, right? And B, the US could go net zero, sure.
But if the rest
of the world doesn't give a fuck, right? And so if you really want to put a dent into that, go export, go develop natural gas, export natural gas, and compete on a global market and make it a better fuel. The same way that fracking you took a shotgun to coal here in this country and emissions went down, if that's your game. Right.
Right. Which we do have a lot of LNG plants popping up. I think there's supposed to be several over the next 18 months.
Yeah. And guess what? Business could bootstrap the stakeholders until those sites, because they're all energy intensive sites, mining. Right. And so like, that's where it's like, hey, we're here for a good time, maybe a long time, but if not, that's cool. Right. Like that's Bitcoin mining. Right. And so that's, environmentalists, I think should also be pro-nuclear. Right. So it's just, when people say, oh, I'm this or that, describe it to me.
Right.
Tell me what you mean, because I don't do labels, man.
I know you identify as something, but what does it actually mean?
Yeah, like describe it to me.
I'm so sick of everybody trying to, everybody tries to put themselves or someone else into a certain box nowadays. And it's like, man, chill with the identities.
You're on the left, or you're on the right, you're black or you're white. You hate Bitcoin, you love it. It's like, life is not black and white. Yeah. We live in the shades of gray.
We should go to happy hour. Yes. Like that should be a presidential slogan. Like, let's go to happy hour. Right. And then
let's just all have drinks.
Let's just have a drink and chill. And then and everybody would calm down. And so that's, I love Twitter. I love social media. I love Collide. Right. And, but you should also do things in person as well.
100%.
I think it's very important. So, we're very excited to, see how things are going to progress. I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Tell us a little bit about the newsletter first. So.
Oh yeah. So the newsletter comes out every week. It's called the Vibe Check. It's a rundown of what I think happened in the week. It's a synopsis, right, between your coffee and your second shit in the day. Yeah. Right. It has all, a whole bunch of links of the industry, so pubcos, have their monthly reporting. That's all there. Any news that matters in the space that's there. And we have a couple memes at the end.
Nice.
So it's shareable. It's meant to be funny, but mostly informative.
It's great.
And this is us just going to just say this out publicly and call Mario out, but we want to have him on once a month.
Yeah. Mario Minute.
The Mario Minute, but it's going to be like an hour.
Yeah.
Sure. Time is relative.
Maybe there's a better name for that. I don't know.
He's got Muay Thai after this today, so he wouldn't have a drink, but we'll have him on an off day.
I'll bring some mezcal.
All right. There you go. Yeah. Man, I just got back from Mexico.
You want any Malort?
Yeah, you want some Malort?
Brother, Matt fed me some of that Malort up in Wyoming earlier this year. That's brutal. And I was like, there's this great thing from shit. He told me it was like the best. So he rugged me really good on that one.
It came up in 4th of July. I was with I went over to my brother's house and he had some buddies over and then he was like, oh, you heard of the stuff Malort? And I was like, I did not know that this was like a bigger thing, but it was apparently, And I was like, it's awful.
Well, so we need to have it at Empower next year.
Malort and mezcal.
Yeah.
I just got back from Mexico like 2 weeks ago. I had the best mezcal I've ever had. It was incredible. I'm going to find out the name of it. I'm going to bring you a bottle of it. It was, we drank the whole bottle in one night. It was wonderful.
Cool. We'll run it back with Jake.
Yeah.
It'll be good.
Let's do it.
Two things. First one is go buy tickets for Empower and Fuse, right?
Yeah, we got Fuse coming up real quick. And then this episode should go out like this week. So by the time you guys hear this, August 10th, 2023, Energy Tech Night OKC. And so some of the Bitcoin guys are actually going to be out there.
Yeah. Oklahoma gets down.
Man, Curtis with Compass comes to he came to Denver.
Dude, Curtis is the best.
Curtis can say everything.
I love Curtis.
He's just so down. Curtis, you're listening. We love you, man.
Yeah.
You're just a good dude.
Good dude.
Really, really, really good dude. So come out to Fuse as well.
And then also, before Empower next year, this is a call to the Houston Bitcoin community and anybody who cares. I want to get together a Bitcoin energy tent at Rodeo.
We've been talking about it.
So
it's about time to.
I'm happy to send emails and schedule a Word doc, but we gotta
orange pill all million people.
But that's how you do it. Oh, yeah. You don't do it at an infomercial. Hi, welcome to Bitcoin mining. No, it's great. We got barbecue. We got some drinks. Homeboys playing the guitar, and we get everybody together.
And these folks see that it's not all Lambos and freaking
exactly. And then the finance bros come out of their tower, right? And the family offices come out from the west side, right? The entrepreneurs get down. Even Big Oil shows up, and everybody comes out with not only more trust but also ideas. Right?
I like it.
Dude, we should not only do a tent, we should do the biggest and baddest rodeo tent the world's ever seen.
Dude, I think
that's what I'm saying.
It's a great
All
idea.
right, great.
Let's do it.
We're manifesting.
We're manifesting this right now.
Put the rings
With all
together.
our- yes.
Yeah, the rings.
We're doing it. It's happening.
Kim, insert a fire or something.
Yeah, we should. That's great. Well, yeah, man. Thank you for coming, Mario.
Yeah,
and
thanks for having me.
Yeah, we are going to have you like once a month. That'd be great.
I'm down.
Cool. Let's do it.
Cool.
Awesome, guys. Take 2 seconds. Go blow Mario up. Tell me when I'm on the podcast once a month moving forward. Go share this with your friends. Catch you guys in the next episode. And we're back. We're back, by the way. We took a little bit of a hiatus. Justin's been traveling. We're back. We got a billion episodes that we're going to be cranking out here soon. So we're super excited. Love being back. Love you guys. Thanks for all the support. Catch you guys soon.
Later.
Ciao.